Welcome back, everyone. For today's video, we are going to be taking a look at the game that I am playing in the German Bundesliga. Now, many of you guys might be wondering what on earth is the German Bundesliga. Now, the German Bundesliga is a chess event. I believe there are 16 different teams with 8 players on each team. So it's a very, very big event. It's also an opportunity for a lot of players who are not able to break into the elite levels in chess to earn a living where they get paid for playing games. So it's a very serious event. Obviously, I'm on a team that's trying to win this event, which of course would be Schachklub Viernheim. I think it's F, not a V, even though it's a V in the name, but Schachklub Viernheim. And I'm trying to help the team win the German Bundesliga in the top division. Now, the way that the German Bundesliga is structured is an event that happens over 7 or 8 different weekends. I might have the number wrong, but it's about, I believe, 13 to 14 matches. So it's a very, very long event. And one of the reasons I've never competed before is that since it's only weekends of 3 matches spread out over a lot of time, I come from America, and as an American, it's quite expensive to travel across the sea, go back home, and rinse and repeat. So for that reason, this is my first time playing this event. This club here in Viernheim made me a very generous offer. Also, one of the players on the team, Hikaru, actually asked me if I'd be willing to participate at the end of Norway Chess last year, and I did agree to compete. So without further ado, and all the blah, 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 let's jump right into the action. So, first game I'm playing is today with the black pieces against none other than Matthias Bluebaum. Now, Matthias Bluebaum is a very strong German player. He's rated about 2650, a little bit above, give or take. He's also a player who's coming straight from another tournament to participate today. Now, Matthias Bluebaum was actually another part of Germany competing in this event called the Metropa Cup, and he decided not to play today in the last round in order to return back here to Viernheim to play against me. Also, someone that we know from having competed against him many, many times in Title Tuesday, where we've had some great battles. So, I'm playing with the black pieces, and Matthias opens with the move d4. Now, again, also to be clear for everybody who's wondering, this event is a classical time control. It's played with an hour 40 plus 30-second increment for move number 1. Once you get past move 40, you get additional time. I believe it is 50 minutes for the rest of the game. So we get d4. I play d5. We get c4. Now I play e6, knight to f3. And here I play this move a6. Now, this is a system that I do not believe that I've ever played before, but this is what we call the Janowski variation within the Queen's Gambit decline. Now, the reason that a6 is played here by black is for a couple of reasons. If white were to play the same move like e3 after takes, bishop takes c4, the pawn on a6 supports the pawn thrust with this move b5. So for that reason, Matthias decides to play the move c takes d5. It's also worth pointing out that this Janowski variation of the Queen's Gambit decline has been played many times by a certain former 5-time world chess champion, Magnus Carlsen. So Matthias trades the pawns on d5, and now he plays the move knight to c3, and here I go c6. Now, the idea behind this is that the pawns are all protecting each other. Pawn on a6, again, might support b5. Maybe I go a5 down the road. As we're going to see in the game, there is another plan as well where a6 stops white from jumping to the b5 square with either the knight or the bishop. So Matthias plays queen c2, I go knight to f6, he plays bishop g5, now I go bishop to e6 here. And the reason behind this development, normally you'd expect black to play knight bd7, is that with this pawn on a6, I intend to push this pawn to c5 down the road because white will never be able to put a piece on the b5 square. So the game continues with e3, I play h6, bishop to f4 is played by Matthias. He could have gone bishop h4, but after bishop d6, bishop d3, knight bd7, castles. Computer actually likes black a little bit more already because his bishop on d6 is on the very, very nice diagonals here. We also have a wooden shield in the center of the board, and I can still play for ideas like down the road with something like rook c8 and potentially c5 using the c file here. So we get bishop f4, and now I play the move c5. And now we see why I played a6 so early in the game. Because if white could go knight b5 here, say this pawn were on a7, for example, this threat of knight c7 would be potentially game ending here because there's no real way to stop knight to c7. I can't move a bishop. If I move the knight, there's knight c7, and it's GG, why not? So already we see why a6 is such a helpful move, because even though it didn't look like it was doing anything early on, obviously, I'm from the future, I'm a time traveler, and I could see that down the road, this move is going to be very important as it would stop these threats like knight to b5. So Matthias goes d takes c5 here. Of course, this was still well within my preparation. I take, he goes bishop to e2, and now I play knight c6. He castles, and here I play the move rook c8 after quite a bit of a think. Now, initially, I wanted to castle here, but there is one issue with the position. I have what we call the isolated pawn here, this pawn on d5, where if I can, for example, play something like d4 and get to a position like this, for example, I have no weak pawn in the center of the board here, and now the position is completely equal. So I have this one weakness on d5. White intends to put a rook on d1 and pressure this pawn, so I do have to be a little bit careful. So the reason I played rook c8 as opposed to castles is I was a little bit unsure what was going on in this position after knight to a4, bishop a7, and knight c5. Now initially I thought after queen e7 takes, I'm probably okay here, but it was very, very hard to judge exactly what the evaluation was. I simply wasn't sure. So I decided instead to play this move rook to c8 right away to stop knight a4 and knight c5. If he goes knight a4 and I play, let's just say bishop a7 and knight c5 here, I think here I can take and play g5 with a knight to e4 trick. And if white goes back, now I have knight to d4, and look at these knights, which are starting to jump. So Matthias plays rook d1. Now I go queen to e7. Important move here, because if I were to castle, white can maybe take this pawn on d5 already. And after takes, queen takes c5. Uh-oh, spaghetti. I've lost the pawn in the center of the board. And the rook on d1 is pinning the knight on d5. Now, oddly enough, computer actually thinks that black, I think, is maybe... Initially, it was saying black is okay. Now it's saying black is not okay. But initially, I thought it was okay. But of course, I am not a computer, and I can't calculate all the lines. So I go queen to e7 here. No threats on the file anymore with the queen off the d file. And additionally, the queen protects the bishop. So now knight takes pawn would be a huge blunder, because after takes, the queen guards this bishop on c5. So a dual purpose move. Remove the queen from the file and guard the bishop. Matthias goes knight to e5 here. And now I play this move bishop b4 after a very, very long think of 17 minutes. Now, the reason that I decided to play this move bishop to b4 here was that I was not really sure exactly what was going on if I were to castle, because after takes, and bishop e5, suddenly this pawn on d5 is very awkward. The bishop also is very, very well placed on the e5 square. Say we got a position like rook c8 and bishop f3 here. Already, I feel like at this point in the game, after takes, and knight e4, maybe bishop, I guess bishop d4 here is not a move. But maybe queen d3 takes, for example. It feels like white is doing well with the two b's here. I've got this weak pawn in the center of the board, and I just did not feel great. So I spent a lot of time here before playing this bishop b4 move, and the reason is actually quite apparent. If white were to proceed with takes here and bishop to e5, now I can play knight to e4 right away here. Knight on c3 is pinned. If I'm ever able to trade, for example, and get this structure, even if white wins the pawn, for example, I should always have very, very good drawing chance here because of the weakness. And if white were to go for another idea with bishop takes pawn on g7, it looks like a free pawn. But after rook to g8, white is in a lot of trouble here. Maybe white can go f3 according to the computer, but just to show you guys the fancy line, if white plays bishop to d4, I can sack the rook with rook takes pawn on g2. And after king takes rook, queen g5 check. If white goes king h1, uh-oh, spaghetti-o. Knight takes f2 is simply checkmate. If white goes king f1, I have bishop h3 check, king e1, check, block takes, and again, it is checkmate as the king has no squares available. And last but not least, if white were to play king to f3, there's simply queen g4 mating the king on f3. So, after bishop to b4, Matthias plays the move bishop f3, trying to stop me from getting this knight to e4 move. Now I decide to take right away. If I were to castle after takes and bishop e5, now white once again has gotten the bishop on this classic e5 square, and there's a lot of pressure on the pawn, and I don't have knight to e4 here as white is covering the square with this light square b. So, I decide to take right away. Matthias takes. Now I castle. And what you'll notice here is that Matthias is not able to get this position with the bishop on e5. After he trades on c6 here, he'd love to go bishop to e5 right away, but here the queen is under attack. So white is one move too slow. If white could get this position, for example, say you get something like this, white already might potentially be quite a bit better, as the bishop is on the perfect square and the perfect diagonal to boot. But here after takes, the queen is under attack. So Matthias here plays queen d2, and this move effectively is Matthias admitting that he cannot gain an advantage here. Now, what Matthias could have tried to play was queen to d3 here, but already after rook f8, now I have the double stack on the c file, and after white goes bishop e5 here, there are many ways for me to play this. One of them is quite simply to go knight g4, and after bishop c3, I have queen to h4, hitting both of the pawns on h2 and f2, and after bishop g4, queen g4, with opposite color b's here, and the bishop protecting this pawn, which can no longer be attacked by either a bishop or a knight, I have no issues whatsoever. So, Matthias plays queen d2, and now I go rook fc8. He plays rook c1. If he were to play bishop e5 here, now I have knight to e4. And if we ever get this trade on e4 here, now the pawn is no longer a weakness, and I have great scope for my light square b. So, Matthias plays rook c1, I go knight e4, he takes knight, we swap all the towers, I take on e4, Matthias plays a3 and offers me a draw. Now, I would have loved to have offered Matthias a draw sooner, but this is my first time playing in the German Bundesliga, and I simply did not know the rules. Now, what I mean by that is usually when I play events, there's a 30 or 40 move no draw rule, but I did not know if there was a no draw rule or if there was a move limit rule or anything. Now, as it turns out, there is a 20 move rule before you can offer a draw, but as I didn't know, I waited for Matthias to offer me the draw so I wouldn't make a mistake. Nonetheless, the game ends here in a draw. Very, very balanced position. Same number of pawns here. Also, we have opposite color Bs. No weaknesses for either side, and the game ends peacefully. So this game ends peacefully. Not necessarily the greatest result for me. Obviously, I'm playing someone about 100 points lower rated. But with the black pieces first game here, it's not that big of a deal. I guess my only regret, if I had a regret, is that the game was really quite boring. There wasn't a lot of meat to it. So, for that reason, we're going to be taking a look at another game being played by my fellow teammate, Nodirbek Abusatorov, against none other than my compatriot from America, and also the famous freaking legend, Gada Kamsky himself. Now, Gada Kamsky recently has complained a lot about playing with the black pieces, so it's only fitting that in the first game of this weekend of the German Bundesliga, he also gets the black pieces yet again. So, Nodirbek needs no introduction, very strong junior player from Uzbekistan, and one of the players who I think has the biggest potential to potentially become world champion down the road. So, Nodirbek opens with e4. We get to move c5 from Gada. Gada has started playing the Sicilian more frequently. He used to be Mr. Rock solid with e4, e5, but he's been playing Sicilian recently. He actually got crushed in a beautiful game by Alireza Firouzja in France at the end of 2023, which helped Alireza qualify for the candidates. So we get e4, c5, knight f3, e6 from Gada, d4 takes, knight c6, knight c3, and queen to c7. Nodirbek goes bishop to e3. We get the move a6 being played, and now bishop to d3, b5, and Nodirbek trades the knights on c6. All pretty standard so far. This is just mainline theory. Now here, Gada captures with the queen. He could try to capture with the pawn to go bishop b7 and c5. Say white were to castle and play h3, c5. Now black can push the pawns, build a chain, and he's got the open scope for the b. Gada decides instead to take with the queen in this game. Nodirbek goes queen d2, preparing to castle to the queen side. We get bishop b7, castles is played here. Now white potentially can try to line up a big threat with the double stack on the d file. Gada goes b4. We get to move knight to e2, knight to f6, and Nodirbek goes f3, protecting the pawn on e4 and building the classic connect 4 and winning the game. After f3, we get bishop c5. Nodirbek goes king b1, and now we get d6 here from Gada. This is apparently a fairly severe error. Computer wanted him to castle right away, but Gada figures he gets rid of a weakness and he protects the bishop on c5. Nodirbek plays h4, and now Gada plays this move knight d7. Already here, it's a little bit uncomfortable for black to play because his pawn on d6 can become a weakness down the road, and white is already starting to push p on the king side, and you're not really sure where do you castle a king. If you go queen side, for example, you've already created some weaknesses here. Both the pawns on b4 and a6 are being spied. White can go c3 and try to open up the c file as well, and it feels quite bad, and the computer agrees, actually, thinks that black is already down by more than one pawn. So after h4, we get knight d7. Nodirbek goes h5 here, trying to push p on the king side. We get h6 from Gada, and now Nodirbek plays c3. Anyway, basically telling Gada, look, I've started pushing my pawns on the king side. You're going to get mated if you castle. Like if you castle, maybe I can even sack here and go for a rook lift with rook h3 or rook h4 and kill the king on g8. And at the same time, when you play c3, now Gada's going to have trouble castling the king to the queen side. So Gada decides to play a5 here. Nodirbek now plays knight to d4, pressuring the queen on c6. We get queen to b6, and now this great move, bishop to b5, pinning the knight on d7. Now, the reason that this move is so strong is Gada really is in trouble. He's pushed these pawns to a5 and b4, so it's really, really hard to castle a king to the queen side. Say you castle and white plays something like rook c1 here, for example, king b8. Even if you get, I guess takes here isn't a move, or no, it is takes, and something like bishop to e2 with rook c2 and rook c1 or rook c4, it feels like black is in a lot of trouble, and the bishop on b7 is very, very passive with the pawn chain from g2 to e4. So, Gada goes rook to d8 here, protecting the knight, and now basically decided he's either going to castle his king to the king side, or he's going to try to be like that famous streamer Hikaru and play the classic bomb cloud with king to e7. Here, Nodirbek plays rook to h3 here, a rook lift to go to g3 and pressure the pawn on g7. And after this move, it's very clear that Gata can never castle his king to the king side, because after castles takes and something like bishop takes h6 here, actually, this doesn't work right here. Maybe rook g3 first. There's a lot of pressure on the king side here, and black is in really serious trouble. So Gata takes on c3, we get queen c3, and now he plays Le Bon Cloud with king to e7. Now, computer wants black to castle, but for a human, it's very, very hard to play a move like this, because after takes, there's so many things that are scary. There's knight e6 with bishop takes c5 and a pin on the file. Also, it feels like after rook g3, something really terrible is about to happen to you on the g file and the long diagonal. And so Gata plays Le Bon Cloud with king e7. Nodirbek goes a4 here, a nice move to plant the bishop on b5 here, and always spy the knight on d7. Gata plays knight to e5, and now Nodirbek plays rook g3, pressuring this pawn on g7. Now we get rook g8 from Gata, king to a1 played here by Nodirbek. Not the best move. Computer wants this move queen to d2, which I assume creates even more pressure. But king to a1 is a very logical move here. Now f4 is a threat because the pawn on e4 cannot be captured with a check. If you were to play f4 right away, takes, and the king is under attack. So we get king to a1 here. Gata goes rook c8, and now Nodirbek plays f4, going all in. Gata now blunders the game away with this move, bishop takes d4, which to the untrained eye is not obvious. Computer thinks after knight c6, black is apparently in the game and okay. But again, it's understandable that Gata decides to trade, because Gata's saying, well, he's going to take. And after takes, and knight to d7, yes, white is better with the two b's, but the pawn on e4 is weak. Your king is actually quite safe here on the center of the board, and nothing can go wrong. Unfortunately for Gata, what he misses here is that Nodirbek sacks the queen with bishop takes bishop. And now after Gata captures the queen, Nodirbek does not take the queen, because then you would lose this rook on g3, but instead he plays rook takes rook here, and Gata Kamsky, mind exploding, just resigns the game on the spot. And as you can tell from the valuation bar, it's simply GG, why not? Reason for that is the queen is under attack. This rook here guards the b, so the queen has to move, and after queen to d8, white takes the horse on e5 here, and black is just getting crushed. If you take the pawn, there's bishop c5 checking the king, and after king f6, there are many ways for white to win. There's actually some kind of forced checkmate in here, but white can simply just take the queen and win anyway. And if black plays d5, there's bishop c5 here. King has no squares to escape to. It's simply stuck in the middle of the board. And if you play something like f6 here after takes, if you take with the queen, bishop c5 wins the queen. If you move the king, there's rook to c7, creating the kebab on the 7th. And after king f8, rook takes bishop. White is rook and two b's for the queen. Rook on g8 is dead. King is dead. All black's pieces are simply horrible. So after rook takes c3, Gata just decides he's had enough. He resigns the game as he misses this brilliant queen sacrifice from Nodirbek, and Nodirbek wins a very, very nice game against a famous frickin' legend. So with that win, this most likely means that my team, Club Viernheim, will probably win our match today. Now, tomorrow is going to be the big match of the season. Basically, the winner of the match between Club Viernheim and Baden-Baden will probably determine who wins the first division of the German Bundesliga. It's also going to be a huge match because tomorrow will be the return of one of the great matchups, with myself playing against none other than the 5-time world champion Vishwanathan Anand from India, a player who I have actually not played since 2019, which was before the classic pandemic. So it's going to be a huge blast from the past. That team with Baden-Baden also has players like Levon Aronian, Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, whereas my team is Parham Magsudulu, Nodirbek Abusturab, Jan-Christoph Duda, myself. So it's a huge, huge matchup tomorrow. And of course, I will be doing a recap of my game at the very least, if not more than my game. But it's going to be a huge match at any rate, so I'm going to call it for right now. I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap from the German Bundesliga, where I am competing over the weekend. If you guys do like my content, make sure that you smash that subscribe button if you haven't already, and I'll be back tomorrow with another great recap from the German Bundesliga. Auf Wiedersehen for now. See you guys. Bye.